Welcome back. You're still watching SA Today. Now, you may or may not know, but today is the International Day for Tolerance, and it's being observed across the globe. This is a day, an annual day that was declared by UNESCO to generate public awareness of the dangers of intolerance. And to help us unpack the significance of a day like this, we're now joined by Zonke Mpotulo, who's the CEO of the African Consciousness Learning Center. She joins us in our studio in Pretoria. Thanks so much indeed for joining us. Welcome to the program. You know, when we live in a country such as ours, with the history that our country has, I guess a day like this is one that we need to keep on thinking about, A, where we've come from, where we are, and where we'd like to be in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. Days like today are reminding us as a nation that we've got a lot of healing to do because we are a wounded country, and that the work starts with us as human beings, as individuals, and then travels on to our families and obviously our communities as well.
All right, let's start unpacking the word tolerance, because it means different things for some people. Some people might think to tolerate means to put up with. For somebody else, it might mean to genuinely have empathy and understanding for somebody's actions or beliefs. How do we unpack this word tolerance?
So tolerance is the capability or the willingness to say, I may not like how you live your life, I may not agree with a lot of things that you are about, but I'm willing to treat you as a human being, and I'm willing to respect you and listen to you. And I think it offers us an opportunity for a beginning to start to say, if we can at least respect each other, listen to each other, we can go further on and talk about unity and talk about empathy.
I would imagine that a country such as ours, with such depth of diversity, there are so many differences that make tolerance a word that we really need to engage with.
Yes, and I think our diversity as a South African nation is giving us an opportunity to really unite in our diversity. But I think gone is the time where we have to lecture one another about how to be united or push political policies and so on. But it's an opportunity, I think, that says, as Zonke, as an individual, what am I willing to own? What am I willing to change within myself, and hope that my change will inspire the person next to me?
So how do we go about creating a more tolerant society? You know, we grow up in certain cultural backgrounds and beliefs, then religion is thrown into the mix, and then we haven't even started dealing with color and other kind of prejudices. How do we start to traverse some of these things that might be an abomination from where I'm standing?
The first thing is that we have to recognize that we have healing to do as a nation, and that we have to start engaging one another and talking to each other. And I think because as a country we've turned to violence a lot of the times to solve our problems, that we don't do a lot of engaging, and we don't do a lot of listening and looking at each other and saying, I was wrong and I'm willing to change. Yesterday we held an event with young people from Alexandria in a school called the Leap 3 in Alex, and we talked to them and we had this dialogue about tolerance, and the young people were saying, I did not know that my behavior was hurting other young people at the school by being a bully. It was only through this conversation that I'm aware that I am bullying other young people by the behavior that I have. And the adults that were in the room as well were able to also say, the young people that are here are challenging me to saying, if they are willing to change, what am I waiting for? So I think dialogue is the first place to start, where communities, church members, wherever we are as a nation, are sitting down and are saying to one another, what can we own as individuals? Let us not lecture one another on how we can change, but what am I owning as an individual, and inspire each other to make that change each day.
All right, so when I hear you speaking, it almost suggests that part of this journey is education, because we may not be aware that we have prejudices and intolerances, and that perhaps pointing them out and helping us unearth them is the first step towards the healing that you're talking about.
Yes, definitely. And that's why I encourage and dialogues. If we are going to have movements that are talking about our tolerance, then those movements need to understand that they have to be places and platforms of healing. And that is the core part of it. Because when we ask people to engage one another and to look at each other and to own up to what they are talking about, then they are educating one another. But the most important thing there is healing. I'll tell you a little story. Yesterday I sat with the CEO of TEAM, which is the movement that is driving tolerance in the country. And we were disagreeing because he's an older man, I'm a younger woman, and we were talking about how we see this country differently. The conversation was so intense that my body language was leaning in. And I think at some point in that conversation, he started sharing about his pain growing up as the elderly son, and how much pressure that was put upon him. The minute he started doing that, the minute he started sharing about himself and talking about his own pain, I could see myself leaning back and really listening to him. And so, although we continued to disagree, but how we were disagreeing was changing, because now we were no longer just disagreeing with one another, we were listening to each other. We were both sharing our common pain growing up as different as we were. And I think that's what really we are trying to encourage, is to say, let us talk about the pain. Let us not just go to violence, but let us talk to each other, let us listen to each other and find commonality, and only then can unity really come.
All right, we've run out of time, but one important question that really sort of speaks to me often is, often the bodies and the groupings that are supposed to be teaching us tolerance are often the perpetrators of the intolerance. I'm talking about my own church experiences and some of the cultural practices that kind of visited me over time. And I just wonder, how do we start to deinstitutionalize and culturalize some of these practices that are in their nature intolerant?
I think that one of the mistakes that we do is that we externalize the work. And so we look at a concept like tolerance and we externalize it. We want to do events where people come and do speeches. Young people are sitting passively, and after the event, no real dialogue, no real engagement has happened. And I think the minute we start to understand that if we are going to be driving this type of work, then as a church institution, as whatever organization, you have to understand that the individuals that are working in there need to take this work as self-work. Gone are the times where we're going to have to lecture people into changing themselves. Our young people are looking and are saying, I'll only follow and be led by people who I trust, by people who I know I can relate to. And so for us to stand and say we are talking about tolerance, but we are not even practicing that in our own families, in our own lives, then it's null and void. It's not going to work. And so for us to internalize the work, we have to recognize that this work starts within us, it goes into our families, and only then we can go to communities and preach tolerance.
Zonke Mpotulo, thanks so much indeed for joining us and giving us your insights on this very, very important day. And I hope that people are paying attention and internalizing some of the things that we've talked about. Thanks so much indeed for your insights this day.
Thank you for having me.